All right, today on this tutorial, we're going to be looking at the caricature assignment, caricature book cover and poster. And what we're going to be looking at doing here is either maybe sketching an idea out of your drawing, a sketch, something that makes sense for you, and then creating a caricature, making it vector in Illustrator, creating a book cover, a 9x9, and then a 24x6 poster. I'm going to start to set this up with you, and then I'm going to go through some ideas of how to get started and best practices and things I want to use, at the same time showing you a bunch of different Illustrator advanced features. So I'm going to Command N or File New and create a new document. To set this up, I'm going to want to make my first one a 9x9 because I know my first artboard would be 9x9. Then I'm going to add the other one in later. You can change it to inches, make sure it's on inches, 9x9. Artboards, once again, you can make it 2 here, but I'm going to do it later. My bleed, for this particular assignment, we don't want any bleed, and we're going to leave everything else alone. We're going to say create, and obviously if you want to name it properly there. We're going to create this. And here I am, there's no bleed around it, that little red mark, the red line around it, not there. We're going to make sure we kind of stay away from that. I want to teach you about not using a bleed and how we just have a white border. So I have my 9x9, I have my artboards open. I'm going to just make a new artboard. Click down here and double click on the icon, and I'm going to make a 24x36. All right, there it is. Now to move that, I can just click on my artboard panel tool and just move it over any way you want. But you see how I move it. The smart guides help me line it up, center it there, and there I am. I can give myself a little more space. Doesn't really matter. We're looking pretty good there. The next thing I want to do is use my margins. I want to create a margin of safety. Usually, at the very least, you need 1/8 of an inch, a 0.125 inch safety or margin around the entire work to make sure your important information, important text, or important pictures will not get cut off during the trimming process, whatever the case is. Just want to be sure about that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce my rulers. Command R shows your rulers, and it also toggles them on and off. Command R, Command R. The way I'm going to do it, there's 2 different ways to set up your guides. I'm going to show you one way, but the other way will be better. What you can do is you can click and drag a guide from the ruler and just drag it and drop it there. You can click and drag another ruler from your left ruler and click and drag, drop there, and there's your guide. You could select the guide. Actually, right now, my guides, I'm going to unlock my guides, so I can move my guides around if I want to. But if I do lock my guides under View and Guides and lock the guides, then obviously I can't move them, which is more likely we don't want to do. So realistically, I can give myself a guide here just by saying, okay, I only want 1/8 of an inch there, and there, and there, and there. And that could be my guide that I've set up. I could use it that way. So no information goes past here. So if I set it up and I have some text there, that I should stay inside this area. So don't go too far. If I go here, that's not a good idea. You want to keep everything inside that safety area, that 1/8 of an inch. But as we see these guides, we could toggle them on and off. Command semicolon or Command colon, toggle on and off your guides. But you know what? I'm going to create a different way to do this to make margins and a safety for myself to get rid of all these guides. So I'm just going to get rid of everything there. This is the way I'd like you to do it, and it's just a little bit easier. So I'm just going to select my rectangle tool, and I'm going to double click. And I know that my artboard is 9x9. What I want to do is I could take it in 1/8 of an inch on either side and make it 8.75, 8.75, so it'll fit in perfectly. But what I actually want to do is maybe I'll give myself a little bit more of a safety and just make it an 8x8, and I'll say okay. So that's all I have to do. It doesn't matter if there's a fill or a stroke on it or anything at all. I'm just going to line it up with my artboard, make sure my control panel is on. I'm going to align, or I can go to my align panel window and align and do the same thing. But make sure that your align panel is, you can see all the options. Make sure you show options, align to artboard, in center and center. And now it's perfectly centered there. Now that's all I have to do is go to View and Guides and make guides. And it automatically converts it to a guide. What I can also do, View, Guides, and once again lock those guides. And now I have a really healthy safety around the whole place, around this whole artboard. And now I can keep myself a little secure there so I don't go too far over, and I leave a nice border there. Also, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go another rectangle tool, double click. It's going to be 24x36, but I'm just going to take 1 inch away from each and just say 23x35. And there I go. Here is my rectangle for now, which I'm going to convert to a guide. Just going to select it and make sure it's perfectly centered inside that artboard. Once again, you can use the align panel or the control. I'm going to go to view and guides and make guides. And there I am. And now it's already locked from before, so I have my guide set up. Perfect. That's all I needed for that. And now what I want to do, I'm going to create a border. So this border, what I can do, if I look back at my other assignment here, I can actually create my work that goes right to the edge, like it does here. It goes right to the edge. But what I want to do is create a border so it always remains as a non-bleed. So there won't be any bleed. It's going to have a white border around the whole thing, the book and the poster. So let's set that up right now. So all I'm going to do is click on my rectangle again, but this time we're going to be using quite a few layers. As you can see here, I have quite a few layers and quite a few sub layers, which I'm going to go to in just a little bit. But I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call it border. It's going to be my top layer because everything is going to be underneath that border. So there's my border. I'm just going to double click. Once again, 24 by 36 is the full size of my poster. Say OK. It doesn't matter right now. I'm just going to align it properly, again, to that artboard. Center, center. And now it's perfectly aligned. I'm going to get rid of the fill and add a stroke. And I'm going to make the stroke. Right now I'm going to leave the stroke black so I can see it. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to increase the size of that stroke window. And stroke is already open. Show my options. And I'm just going to increase it to about 40 point. Maybe a little bit more. But as you see, what can happen here, the align stroke is something's happening here. I could align stroke to the center, which is what it's doing. So my actual path is here, but the stroke is going on the inside and outside. I could align my stroke to the inside, which is what I kind of want to do. Or I could align my path to the outside of that particular stroke. I want it to align to the inside. So I'm just going to add that there. And I'm just going to increase that to about 40 point, which is about an inch away for each one there. Let's keep it at 40. So there I go. And now I can convert it to white. Now you can't see it, but it is there. So if I were to make a fill of anything else, you can see that it is underneath the border. So even if I go to the border with some of my artwork, the white border that I just placed on there will always make sure that I have a bleed. And I'm going to do the same thing with the book cover. So on the border, border layer, I'm just going to click on my rectangle tool, double click. I'm going to make it a 9 by 9 and make sure it's perfectly aligned. Doesn't matter the color. I'm going to fix that right now. Make sure it's perfectly aligned with my artboard. I'm going to switch that. I'm going to make it well, you could keep it blue for now. I'm going to align it to the inside, and I'm just going to make it 40 point, and then I'll convert it to white. And there we go. I have both my borders. What I could do right now is just lock that guide, and I'm good. I've created my border, and that's good to go. So some of the tips I want to help with the caricature here. I'm going to maybe sketch something out and get some ideas from there, and maybe I could scan it in, or I could take a picture of it and just mail it to myself or airdrop it, whatever I want to do. Bring it in and maybe start tracing that idea, get a sketch, get a style going, and how I want to do that. The other thing I want to show you is how the layers work and how I strongly suggest use layers. So I have a couple characters here that I've created, the bear, but I also had this clown one that I made a while back. And I just want to get a sense of how you could just lay over top the shapes, over top and over top and over top. Just kind of keep layering them to create some interest. They're very simple shapes, but they actually can create something a little bit interesting here. If I just look at my eye, I can remove that. That's my, the top part, the bottom part. And if I start to really dissect it, there's the eyelash. I can kind of move these things around. And there's just my pupil there. And it has a couple little highlights, but it's just a bunch of 3 ellipses put together. Also what I've done here with if you look at my appearance panel, I did a little bit of an inner glow to create a little bit of dimension, a little bit of shadow. So you could use those different effects as well to give your illustration a little bit more dimension. So we could kind of play around with that, which is really, really nice. The other thing I've done here is I've grouped similar objects, and that's part of the assignment, that you want to group things that are similar. So that eye that I had originally put together, I could group the whole thing because it is a similar object. So that way, if I click on it once, the whole thing gets selected. That was Command G, or Object and Group. And if I want to ungroup it, Command Shift G, and that ungroups it. So now it's just individual pieces again, which is fine. So I strongly suggest using grouping, but also with my bear here, I did the same thing with these little freckles. So they were originally obviously on their own, but as I select them, I was like, oh, let me group all those together. That way, when I select it once, I select the whole group of them. You could also put that into its own layer, which I suggest you do as well, and make lots of different layers. So let's look at my layer panel right now and see how I've organized mine. Okay, so I have a lot of layers here. Let's go just to the basic here. The clown one I just put there just to show you, but I'm going to have my border layer. So my borders are on there. I have my bear layer for this. I didn't do it on this one. I have my bear layer, and I have the book bear that he's just on his own layer, and the backgrounds. I have the backgrounds on their own layer as well. But if I go inside the bear layer, what I actually have here as well are even more sub layers inside the bear layer. So I have the ears, because the ears are the foremost piece, so I wanted them on top. Then I have the face, and then the hat and the hands and the sign and the body. So if I even go inside of the face, I have even more sublayers: the hat, the freckles, the hairs, and nose and eyes. If I go inside the eyes, I even have even more. I have the brows that are just the eyebrows themselves. And I have one where I could just see the pupils, so just the pupils are there. So you could really make a lot of sub-layers to really organize yourself here in Illustrator. And InDesign also does the same type of layering. So you could really kind of give yourself a lot of organization, really clean things up, say, you know what, I don't want to see the eyes right now, I don't want to see the nose, I don't want to see the mouth, I want to play around with something. You can really organize yourself there, which I strongly recommend you do. So that's a great way to use the layers. And the other option here too, the other part of the assignment is how we overlap some of our objects, how we overlap the shapes. So we can kind of have a situation where we overlap two shapes and it doesn't line up so well, or there's an issue. Now, if your style or your caricature is a sketchy kind of different style you're going for, that's totally fine. But if it's a clean look and all of a sudden you have situations where the shapes don't overlap properly and there's a bit of gap shown and you can see the background or whatever's behind it, you really want to clean those things up. So the overlap, you really want to make sure it's nice and tight, nice and clean. So that's another mark that we're going to be looking at as well. And let me go through a couple more things here. So a part of this assignment also is to make a new rich black swatch. So rich black is an even darker, or we say a richer black than the black that's already given to us. So let me make this here. So I have a square and I put the black in it. Now if we double click on the black, we can see what the black is made up of. 0% cyan, magenta, and yellow, and 100% key, the K, is black. 100% of it. That's great. And that's a good black. But there's also another swatch we can have. It's called rich black. And what I can do here is I could actually create a new swatch, or click down here, new swatch. And I'm going to make the black 100% everything. Now, some printers would prefer you not make 100% everything. Maybe let's say 50% or 40% of CMY and then 100% K. For now, I'm just going to say 100% everything. That means it layers over 100% cyan, 100% magenta, 100% yellow, and 100% black over top of the one area that's all ink. And it makes for a very, very rich black. I'll say, okay. Now at the moment you can't tell the difference, but if you were to create a PDF of this, you would be able to see that this black is far darker than this black. And what I want you to do with this is just to apply that black, that new rich black swatch, this one here, this is your new swatch, to any element, just to have it there. So you show me that you've made it and you actually applied it as well. Now you can, if you'd like to, get rid of this black altogether and just add the rich black swatch to all your black areas. That's entirely up to you, but at least you want to see you know how to use it and you've set it up. The other thing I want to go through here is using global colors. These colors here, I'm just going to do a quick little demonstration here. So global colors are a very useful tool in Illustrator. And what it is that I'll have these three squares that have, say, this blue, this cyan. And that's great. And I'm going to have another set of squares that I'm going to make this purple. Now, the way global colors work, let's look at this. This blue right here is not a global color. I can tell because a global color has a white triangle in it. So let me convert this blue, or this purple, sorry, to a global color. That's all I have to do is double click on it. And in that panel, it says global. So I can make it a global color. Now let me show you the difference between a global and non-global color. If I were to change this blue, right here, I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to change the blue color to maybe a little bit lighter or whatever, add a little bit green, however we want to do, and say okay. Only what happens is that shape I had selected will change to that color, where the other two blue did not change. But now if I change the purple, that is a global color, and applied to these three shapes, I could select the global color, the purple, and change the color of it. And what happens is every color that was a part of that was made, that purple, will change altogether at the same time. So global colors are a very, very useful way to keep all of the colors that you're using and make them stay the same. Essentially, that way, anywhere that instance of the purple shows up, they all change accordingly at the same time, which is a really nice way to use global colors. Global colors is a very useful tool. Next, what I want to show you are the brush tool. The brush tool is a very great tool. You have the brush tool and the blob brush tool. I'm going to start with the paintbrush tool. And mainly what you can see, we have our brush panel open as well. If you don't have it, go to Window and go to Brushes. And we're already given a few default brushes. So I'm just given this brush here, and I'm just going to click and drag, and there is a brush. That's fine. What I could do with that, I could select that stroke, because it is a stroke. I can select that stroke, and I can change up the style of the brush, and I can go to the stroke weight and increase the size of it so I can get a better sense of what it is. But look at a few different ones down here. I can click on that, and I could also get an interesting style there. But also what we have to see is that we can tap into Illustrator. Has a bunch of libraries that we could look at, brushes. So I'm just going to click on the drop down here and click on Open Brush Library, and there's quite a few different ones I could look at. Arrows, artistic, borders, bristle brush, decorative, image brushes. There's quite a few, and there's a bunch you could find online. You can download, you could buy. So let me just go to artistic really quickly, go to paintbrush, and a new panel opens up, a new panel of different brushes. What I can do is just click on them, and they automatically get added to my main brush panel. I can click on, say, I really like that one, increase the point size, and really get a sense of how this works together. You know, they're kind of quite interesting, actually. And then I can play around with them and do whatever I want. If I'm kind of content with them or I want to change them, you can change them anytime. And also, if I want, I can go down to this little button here, and it gives me options for certain brushes. I can change up the angles of certain brushes. I can change up the roundness or none. I can change up the size here, which I say that's a bit much, but I can play around with it here just by clicking on this little icon here. You could adjust the options for certain brushes and how they play around. Okay, so next what I want to show you is the blob brush. The blob brush is similar to the main paintbrush tool, but what it does, it actually creates a fill, not a stroke. So this one is a fill, as you can see here, it actually has a fill. And this one, the main one, has a stroke. So the paintbrush tool makes it paints with a stroke. The blob brush paints with a fill. So those are the only difference between the two, but it's nice because you can select this and then you could obviously see how individual paths and individual nodes you could play around with and create something more, something new, however you want to kind of play around with that there too. So the two differences between those two. The next I want to show you is how to make custom brushes. Custom brushes are pretty easy, but they're kind of fun actually to play around with too. So I'm just going to make a little simple brush here, just a quick little playing around with some circles and some sizes. And what I can do with this is I can convert this and make this its own brush. There's three kinds of brushes I can make. If I just select all of it and I click and drag it into my brush panel, and I say what kind of brush, so I'm going to try all three. Scatter brush. I'll say okay, and I'm going to make all of these random. You could really fine tune these and make them exactly how you like them. I'm just going to say okay, and there is my brush tool right there. So what I can do is click on my brush and just paint. And I have a scatter. That's a scatter, how it works. And it's just a stroke. It's following the path, and that's my scatter brush. Let me try that again. But this time, I will, let's try this one actually. There we go. I will take this. No, that's not going to work. I'll make another one really quickly. Doesn't matter, just playing around. And I'll grab this and I'll bring this into again, and now this time I'm going to drag it into your swatch panel, your brush panel, and I'm going to make it an art brush. And my art brush, once again, I have different options. I can play around with how I want them to be painted. I'm just going to say okay for now. And what I can do, once again, with my paintbrush, I can just click. Oh, let me actually click on that brush. Nope. There it is. This is the brush, sorry. And I can paint with my brush wherever I dragged it to. There we go. And that is my art brush of that style I just made, of that particular design I made. That's my brush. Also, I can make let's do this again. I can turn that into a pattern brush. And you can see kind of what the pattern is going to do here. If I do paint that, I'll say okay. And now all of a sudden I can make a pattern brush. And it just kind of follows. Oh, sorry. Once again, let me click on that so it makes the pattern. I'm just going to select that stroke that I've already made. All these moved around on me. Okay, once again, select that and click on my pattern. There's my pattern. Very similar to the scatter brush, but it actually has a pattern over top of it. So just playing around with brushes and getting familiar with how the brush tools work. You can play with around the libraries or make your own custom ones. The next thing I want to show you is the text tool, because there's a few different ways to play with the text. If I am to make my own cover, and I'm obviously on yours, you're going to have a title of your book cover, and you're going to have the name. So what I want to do, I'm just going to click. If I just click, I can start typing, is my bear book. I'm just going to type that in. And obviously what I could do, I can click on this. I could change up using the control panel or the character panel, window, type, character, and I can change up anything I want with the character panel, which we're very familiar with now. Show options, and I can see everything available to me. I can change up the typeface. I can change up the font. I can change up the point size, the leading, the kerning, the tracking, and anything I want here, how I want that to work. And if I'm all set with it, what I could do here, right now, the text box has this little white line there, or sorry, white circle selected. And what I could do at this point, in this style of the text box, is I can click and drag and actually make it quite a bit bigger. And I hold down Shift to make it proportional. Move it any way I want. But if I just want to work with the frame that it's in, I could just double click on this little circle and it converts it to a fill. Now what I'm working with is not the word itself, but the frame that it's in. And I can frame it any way I want. I can bring it really down, or I can move it out bigger, however that works. And then when I'm done with that, if I'm done working with the text frame, I can double click again. And now I'm just working with the text again and kind of play with it that way. So there are two ways to kind of work with the frames, and I can play with them that way and make it work however I need to make it work, and also add my name wherever that's going to go as well. So a couple different ways to play with the text tool. A few other things I want to show you. I have a square here that I'm just dragging out. I just want to quickly show you how to round the rectangles. It's a pretty interesting way to do that. You just click on it, and these little circle tabs inside will let you click and drag, and you can quickly round out the corners as much as you want. Or if I double click on one, I can just move one at a time, however I want that to work. So just a quick way to round your rectangles. And obviously, if I were to convert this type to a graphic, so convert, create outlines, I could actually take one of these, and you can see all the little circles that are on there too. And I can do the same thing here. I can grab one of these and click and drag and convert that any way I want, just to round out any corners. It's kind of a very interesting way to get a cool effect really quickly by rounding out the corners. All right. So next what I want to show you is another kind of interesting technique in Illustrator, is how to rotate something around an object, and using the keyboard Command D to continue doing something that you've already just done. So next step, step and repeat kind of idea. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create almost like a little bit of a flower. I'm going to click and drag a circle. Click and drag, hold down Shift and Alt to make it a perfect circle. I'm also going to duplicate that circle, hold down Option and Shift to duplicate that circle. And this time I'm just going to shrink it down a little bit, Option and Shift to drag it down, and I'm just going to extend it a little bit, just to kind of create a bit of like almost like a flower petal. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on my petal that I want to rotate around this, and I'm going to click on the Rotate tool. But I'm not actually going to do anything with the Rotate tool just yet. That's all I'm going to do is, with my Smart Guides on, I'm going to hold down Option. So I've selected my petal shape. I'm going to hold down Option and hover over top of my main circle, which I wanted to pivot around. So using my Smart Guide, it gets me to the center. I'm going to hold down Option and click. And now a little dialog box shows up. Say, what do you want to do here? I want to rotate it at 30 degrees. This is fine. As long as it's a multiple of 360, and it works within 360, I'm going to say 30. Instead of saying OK, I'm going to say copy. And what that does, it copies the one to the other, showing me that. And now what I can do to complete it is just hold down Command and press D, and it just continues to step and repeat the last action I just did over and over and over again. You could do that many times. Even if you were to create a circle and duplicate it, hold down Alt and Shift. If I just held Command D and kept going, it would continue to create that for me. It's a quick way to continue doing something, one step you just did over and over and over again. So now I have a nice little flower. I could do whatever I want here, but it kind of shows you a few different ways on how to use Command D, how to rotate around an object and create a very symmetrical object. So definitely wanted to show you that. You could use that in your character assignment. A very useful way to create some interesting ideas there. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about raster images, because I definitely want to make sure that you are clear on that, because I am going to provide you with the raster images, and the raster image is going to be we're going to pretend it's obviously a National Book Award sticker that you're going to put on your book. So what I did, I found this online, and it was a JPEG. I've converted it to a CMYK color. It can be grayscale because it's black and white, but I want to get us more familiar with CMYK, so it's CMYK. And I've also made it, if I go to image size in Photoshop, I've also made it 300 pixels per inch. But this one I want it to be 1.5. So 1.5 inches, because it's going to go on the book cover. We don't want it to be too big, so I'm just going to say okay. But if we look at this really quickly, at 100%, I notice that the inside of the circle is white and there's black in it and then the black stroke. But on the outside is a transparency, meaning there is nothing outside of it unless I fill it with something. Let's give it any random color. So right now it has a background to it, but I don't want a background in this. What I want to show you is that the TIFF file, which we're about to save it as, can have transparencies. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. This is in Photoshop, Save As. And I'm going to go to my desktop. That's where I'm going to save it. But you should definitely save your files in organized folders. So that way, because what we're going to do with this file, we're going to link it. So let me actually do that for you here as well. Let me go to my Illustrator file, and I'm going to save this file, save a copy for now, and I'm going to go to desktop, and I'm going to save it as my bear. That's fine. AI, perfect. Okay. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my desktop and create a new folder. I'm going to call it Caricature. And I'm going to put my AI file in there of my bear. So there's my bear in there. I'm going to give it another folder called AI, and I'm going to put my bear inside the AI folder. I'm also going to create another folder called Links. And guess what I'm going to put in there? I'm going to put my link in there that I'm about to save as a TIFF. I could also make a final, and I could look pretty good there too. So links and final, and there we go. Okay, so now in Photoshop, what I can do is save this file, save as, save it as a TIFF. I'm going to go into my file here, Caricature, and I'm going to save it as award sticker. But once again, I'm just showing you this, but I am going to provide you with this TIFF that's ready to go. TIFF layers, I'm going to say save. I'm going to get rid of the layers, but look over here what I could do. I could save the transparency, meaning this part will not be seen. So I'm going to say save the transparency and say okay. So TIFFs can support transparency. Now to link the image in, you have embedded images before where you just open the file here in Illustrator and copy and paste it in, and that is embedding. But here I want you to link. We're going to file and place the image. We're going to find it under Caricature, and oh, I didn't put it in there. Let me do that right now. Word sticker, I'm going to put it in my links. There I go. And I'm going to go to File and Place and find it again. And there it is in my links folder. It's never going to move from there, so I'll never have to break the link. And I'm going to place it in. So I've just placed it. And now I'm going to bring it over to my book cover. And you're just going to place it anywhere you want. Doesn't matter. Wherever it kind of makes sense, wherever it's kind of out of the way. And you notice that even though this area in Photoshop, it kind of seemed like, there was no background to it. The transparency is saved on the TIFF, meaning there's no background on it. If I were to save this as a JPEG, there would have been a white background on it, which is what we don't want. We want that nice circle there. So that is how we prepare raster images. That is how we bring in raster images. But I do want to show you another option here too, is finding any image online. But we want to find high-res images. So what I can do here, now this isn't necessary for the project, but I do want to show you this as well, just in case you're never too sure how to do this. I'm going to do this because I was looking at cookies recently. And I'm just going to go to Images on Google and go to Tools. And here I can find a bigger size than what's given to me. I can go to Larger Than and click on maybe even 6 megapixels. And I'm going to get really large size files. I'm going to click on this one here. I can see it's 51 by 4,000. It's really big. View image. And I'm going to grab that image. I'm just going to click and drag it to my desktop. Or I can right click and save image as. But now it's on my desktop. Now let's look at this really quickly. So this is an image I found online. I'm going to hover over, bring it into Photoshop. And here's my image. Let's take a look and see what this image has. What characteristics it has right now. Image mode is RGB because we found it online. I need to convert that to CMYK, and now it's a CMYK image. Perfect. Now my image size, let's take a look. So it's interesting that it was a 300 pixel per inch image that was online. Normally we find 72 pixels per inch image, and it's a 17 by 13. So that's really big. So that's really good. So I'm going to leave that as is. It's already a high-res image. It's CMYK. Now what if I want to, I can save it as a TIFF, and then I can name it properly, and then I can bring it into either Illustrator and InDesign, and that is the correct way to look for raster graphics and then to convert raster graphics. Just make sure that the color mode is CMYK if it's going to be for print, and if the image size, make sure it's at 300 pixels per inch. Okay, that is the Caricature assignment. There's not much more to that, but you could definitely have some fun with playing around. Make sure you've added your gradients and you play around with more effects. Like I said, the inner shadow or drop shadows or whatever you can find here. Play around, have some fun with how some of the type can be warped and interesting things like this. We can go to the warp tool up here. Actually, that's the envelope tool. My apologies. Sometimes the warp tool shows up there too, but it doesn't right now. I'm just going to go to Effect and Warp and Arc. And I can play around with how that might work. Oh, sorry, I think I have to actually select this. Go to Effect and Warp, and no, it doesn't work. I believe I need to convert it to outlines first. There we go. Warp, Arc, and there we go. Now I can preview that, and I can play around with some of the warp options here we have. Really kind of have some fun with it, and I can try out different ones. Lots of different options here to warp your tools, warp your text, warp anything, quite frankly, warp any vector graphic, and you can kind of really play around with all these different kinds there. Okay, so the warp tool, pretty impressive and fun way to play around with type as well. Don't go too crazy. Obviously, we want to keep our effects pretty subtle unless you're going for a very specific style or design. But that is all I wanted to show you.